I'm so excited to have everybody here. Hello, all of you out in the wilderness in your separate little bubbles. It's an odd time to be in music. Music is such a communal activity. It's such a thing that connects us, and it's in a time that we are isolated. So we're glad to have moments like this where we can come together. For those of you that don't know what Music Portland is, we are a trade association. We're an industry association because music is an industry. Whether you perform music, play music, create music, present music, produce music, distribute music, all of the different pieces that it takes to present music in the world, all of you are part of an industry. And increasingly, the industry is being recognized in our community and around the world as not just an art, not something that is a nice to have, but it really is a gotta have that's feeding a lot of people and that is creating a lot of goodness in the world. So I have been very pleased to run Music Portland for the last 2 years. And the pandemic was kind of a sucker punch because we'd really built up steam. But the nice thing is that it gives us a place. For those of you that are new, welcome. We'd love you to be a basic member of Music Portland. That's free. Go to musicportland.org/profile. Spend about 2 minutes and create a profile that just says, I'm here. I'm in Portland, in the Portland area, which includes Vancouver, and I make music. And what we're trying to capture is the state of our economy at the shutdown, because pretty soon people will forget. And we're really trying to create as a benchmark that's as informed by as many people as possible so that we can remember what we were. But the reality is, in a moment of destruction, we have an opportunity to recreate something new. And something new should acknowledge the things we didn't do very well. We didn't do well on equality and equity and diversity. Portland needs to do better. And this is a moment where the more voices we have in this conversation, the better we can do with that. This particular panel, I'm just so excited to have everybody here. This is really talking about the fact that music has value. Music is not something that people should get for free because they click somewhere. Music has taken heart and soul and energy to create, and it has value. And these professionals that are going to be talking are the ones that are going to help you to understand all of the different ways that you can monetize your creation. And this is going to be recorded, and we hope that you'll come back to it. Music Portland is a resource. If you have ideas about this topic with monetizing music and good experiences or bad experiences that you've had, please let us know. If you have ideas about challenges that you're facing in a time of COVID that you just don't know where to go, we are a member organization. We represent you, and we are the collective that can stand together to solve some of these problems. So go to musicportland.org/feedback. If you have anything that you want to gripe about, extol about, muse about, we are connected. And we will be having a first Monday on July 6th. And I hope everybody will come back together. It'll give a chance for all of us to talk to each other. And we are nothing if we are not united. The group now we're going to be introducing is an incredible panel. We've got, first up after me, we've got Wade Metzler of SoundExchange. We're going to be having a whole crew after that, and I'm going to maybe start just with my introduction of Wade, who is SoundExchange. He is a musician himself. He's been there, done that, and SoundExchange is a really remarkable nonprofit that is helping musicians to monetize some of the new realities out there in music. So hoping I did you credit there, Wade. I'll let you take it from here.
Of course. Well, thanks, Meara. And thanks to the rest of the panelists that are on our old friends and new. Great that you guys could all show up. And hello, Music Portland. I hope you guys are all well. So I'm Wade Metzler. I oversee West Coast operations for SoundExchange and have about over 25 years of creative and business development experience in many facets of the music industry, ranging from major music publishers, independent record labels, performance royalties, content licensing. Tonight we're going to discuss copyright, performance royalties, where these royalties come from, who pays them out, a little bit on international, and some letters of direction for the producers and mixers, et cetera, that are out in the crowd. All right, so what is copyright? And I promise not to make this boring. It is very interesting once you guys get into this, so, and once you understand it. So two kinds of copyrights exist in every recorded song. There's the underlying music, the notes and lyrics, and the sound recording, which is the permanent fixation of sounds. These give the owners of the work, usually the creators, the right to control how their work is used. So copy and distribution, public display, creation of derivative of using the work, and public performance. So in this kind of copyright breakdown or an example that I want to give involves the song Respect. So the musical composition, or the notes and lyrics, were written by Otis Redding. The sound recording side of that copyright, or the fixation of sounds, were made popular by Aretha Franklin. All right, so who administers these performance rights? The musical composition side, or the Otis Redding side, that actually underlying composition, BMI, ASCAP, CSAC, GMR, they represent the songwriter and the music publisher for their public performances. On the sound recording side, or the actual fixation of sound and the performance, the Aretha Franklin side in this example, SoundExchange is the only one in the US that actually represents the artist/musician in this, and the copyright holder, which is usually the record label. Could be yourself. Okay, SoundExchange statutory royalties come from satellite radio, internet radio, and cable TV radio. So they're available for non-interactive transmission. What's a non-interactive transmission? Non-interactive transmission is a digital radio-like transmission. So on services like SiriusXM, Pandora, Music Choice, iHeartRadio, when it is actually streamed, not terrestrial. What it's not available on is the actual, what they call an interactive stream, which would be, or an audio-visual transmission like YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify, SoundCloud. So when, give me a thumbs up if I'm still on, because I just got just looks like I got kicked off. Still on? Okay, thanks. So when you think of a non-interactive transmission, you could listen to like Dandy Warhol's radio, but you can't listen to Dandy Warhol's Bohemian Like You. That would be on an interactive transmission like Spotify or Apple Music. Hopefully that makes sense. So a radio-like transmission. A non-interactive transmission, that comes directly from the service, like SiriusXM, Pandora, Music Choice, iHeartRadio, comes directly into us, and we're able to pay out the artists and the rights owners directly. When you do it, when there is a direct license involved on the Spotify and Apple Music, etc., all that license is taken out through the record label, and then the record label is in charge of paying out the mechanicals and the fees that the artist earn off of that, whereas we pay the artists and the rights owners directly. Royalties split by law. 50% of the royalties earned goes directly to the master owner or the record label. 45% goes directly to the featured artist. 5% goes to the backup musicians and sessions players or backup vocalists through the AFM SAG-AFTRA Intellectual Property Fund. If you are a backup musician or session player or a backup vocalist, you can collect that part of that 5% through them. That's something that goes out the door from us and goes directly to them, and you can claim through their website. But as far as if you are a artist and you earn 45% of that play from us, and you own your own masters, and you are distributing through CD Baby or whoever, you are able to then collect 95% of those royalties come in. So if make sure that if you are an independent artist that is putting out their own master recordings, that make sure you're claiming both the copyright side and the artist side share of that fee. A lot of people ask, okay, so what is earned off a play on SiriusXM? So SiriusXM is by far our biggest, the most amount of money that is able to be paid out, because they're the largest company that we deal with. They, you know, a few $1 billion a year, over 16% of that comes into SoundExchange to be able to be paid out to the copyright owner and to the performing artist. So as of this year, as of the middle of last year, we were able to negotiate a 50% raise in what they are paying out. And now you can earn over $50 per play for one play on SiriusXM, 50 per, so it's really around 55. So if you're a copyright owner that owns their own masters, obviously you're earning 95% of that. If you are the artist themselves, you're earning half of that, or say $25, $20. When it comes to a Pandora-like service, then that's paid upon a percentage of, Pandora is a strange one because it has 3 different tiers. So it has a freemium service, and now it has a $4.99 service and a $9.99 service, or a Spotify-like service. Pandora used to all go through SoundExchange, but now just the freemium service goes through. And that's paid on an ad rate percentage on how much they're bringing in through ads and how much that you're being played on there. But it's usually about a quarter of a cent per play. But if someone listens to you 1,000 times, that's 1,000 plays. But if you're played once to 1,000 people, that's 1,000 plays. So those quarters of a penny seem to add up. So moving on to, sorry, and I know I speak very quickly through this, and I know there's questions, and I did put Austin put a best practices for SoundExchange on the MusicPortland site. So when it comes to signing up, it kind of walks you through this so that you guys will be able to see this, and kind of takes you a little bit through of what I'm talking about. But also there's some great information on our website. But before I pass off, I want to talk about a couple things. And one is the letter of direction. And a letter of direction is SoundExchange adopted a practice of accepting these LODs, or letter of direction, from featured performers, instructing us to divert a portion of their royalties to others involved in the recording process, usually mixers and producers. So when you're doing your producer agreement with the artist, it usually includes, I'm going to say usually always includes anything obviously on sales, but any sort of airplay or performance royalties that it might get. If you're a songwriter on this as well too, you're going to earn performance royalties on the ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, GMR side as well too. But this letter of direction helps divert a payment directly to that mixer or producer, instead of it going to the artist and that producer having to chase it down. Or if you're the artist and you're paying out, for you have to even deal with it. So it works out very well. Luckily we do it here in the States. Unfortunately, it's hard to find any sort of letter of direction anywhere else in other territories. But fortunately, if you're recorded in the States and you have released in the States, usually you can collect on these if you are a producer or a mixer.
So Wade, talk a little bit about your work with internationals. I'm thinking about, we got a whole bunch of panelists.
Great, you should ask, because my next piece is on international. Thank you. So we have about close to 50 agreements in place in over 35 different countries that we have reciprocal agreements with royalties being collected in their territory. When we collect these fees from other territories, we do it as a 0% pass-through rate, meaning there is a 0% admin fee. If you earn $10,000 in the UK and it comes in through us because you're going through SoundExchange, we pay you $10,000. We figure it's already been touched by the time it gets to us, and frankly, we don't need to touch it or want to touch it. So we just pass it along as the full amount. Non-interactive royalties in other territories are nothing compared to what they are in the United States, for the mere fact that nobody else has Sirius XM. I think maybe Australia and Canada, but nobody else has Sirius XM and nobody else has Pandora, really. So except a short handful, a small handful of other countries, and that's where most of the money is coming from. When other territories are listening to radio, streaming radio, it's usually through Deezer or Spotify or some other interactive source. So the U.S. is a little bit different when it comes to that, and that's why there is so much money, over close to $1 billion a year that we're able to distribute. The awful thing about international royalties and what happens here in the United States is terrestrial radio. So terrestrial radio is not paid. Performance royalties on terrestrial radio are not paid to the performer or the record label here in the United States. There are 3 other industrialized nations that actually don't pay besides the United States, and that's China, North Korea, and Iraq, and the United States. So obviously not in the best of company when it comes to copyright. So what this means is, since we are not paying out our artists or international artists for this AM/FM transmission to the performing artist and to the record label, we do pay out to the publisher and the songwriter. So in my explanation or my example before, Otis Redding would be paid for a song played on the AM/FM, but Aretha Franklin would not in the States. So other territories do not reciprocate with this payment because we don't pay them. So this is billions of dollars that is lost.
But you are fighting for it. I'm just looking at time. I'm worried. I know you've got a complicated system.
So I will tell you this, and yes, we're fighting heavily for it, but we've just started this. Now we're kind of backdooring, going through trade associations and attempting to get it into trade agreements. So now in the last USMCA, I believe it is, which used to be NAFTA, which is the trade agreement between Mexico and Canada, we were able to get in a performance royalty for this terrestrial airplay, which is starting to be collected on now and will start being paid out next year. So this is
Canada and Mexico?
Correct. Canada's already signed on and ready to roll. Mexico is part of the agreement, but not as far along as Canada. And next, we're working on other territories. There are certain territories that do pay this right, but most don't.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. Well, so what does it mean for a Portland artist? So if somebody is here, they're making great music, should they sign up on SoundExchange if they've never had a play on Sirius and they don't even know where to begin?
Well, I would suggest signing, if you're getting some traction, I would suggest signing up. Like I say, I've kind of gone over what we pay out on these non-interactive stations, but even if you're getting airplay on oh my God, why am I thinking?
Spotify?
No, on KEXP or or something like that. That there still is, when they're streamed, there still is a non-interactive transaction that goes on there that would pay out on. Obviously, we don't charge KEXP anything, so there's not like there's a ton of money there, but if you're getting traction there, you're likely going to get picked up on other services and likely going to be able to get paid out. So I would suggest signing up, because what we don't want to do is what my team has to do is track down people, because we have money waiting for you. Right. And after 3 years, unfortunately, through our government mandate, we have to put that out on the pool release to the rest of the artists that are involved. Yeah. So we try to chase down everybody as much as possible, but I highly suggest just getting your ducks in a row, getting signed up with ASCAP or BMI, CSAC, GMR or and getting signed up with ASCAP, or I'm sorry, with SoundExchange. Sorry, I worked at ASCAP for 6 years, so that so that you make sure that you check the box and make sure that everything is in line.
Yeah, well, we've got Malachi Graham is online with us, who's a local artist, and talk about a little bit about your experience, Malachi. And yeah.
I just wanted to weigh in a little bit with what we've heard from artists who have have gotten like the most payout from SoundExchange, and it's definitely, like Wade says, it's a lot about serious plays. There may be something for you there if you're getting played a lot on some of these other digital radio stations. There's one cool story in this book, How to Make It in the New Music Business by Ari Herstand, about a guy who signed up just to do this sort of like, well, might as well check, and had $14,000 waiting for him because he was on all the children's radio stations on Pandora without knowing it. So that's sort of a like, sign up, there might be a big pile of money. But even if there's not when you first sign up, we've been asking people like, how have they gotten plays on Sirius? Is that something that as we're all stuck at home, we could do as a DIY project? And the important thing there is like, Sirius is a corporate radio station, yes, but there are some independent artists, especially in the genres of rap and folk, that have actually done a great job like reaching out to individual DJs and curators, done just like the DIY promotion thing that you maybe have done in the past to like get blog plays or get on a Spotify playlist. But it's like, don't assume that it's impossible for you to get played on Sirius. It just might take some dedicated effort or take like a radio PR campaign. The folk label that we talked to, that their artists have seen like thousands of dollars coming in from SoundExchange, it's because they're really diligent about doing radio PR campaigns, which I know as an artist, sometimes that's something I just completely overlook as like, well, that's just for exposure. I'm going to cut a corner there. But in the fact of SoundExchange money, when you think about $50 a play on Sirius, that could really actually come back to you in the form of money. So it's just definitely sign up for SoundExchange if you haven't, if you're sitting at home trying to find all that extra money. But also think creatively about how to generate more revenue through digital radio channels. Does that sound about right, Wade?
For sure. It, through, especially if you're going, whether it's your label or whether you're going through your distribution network also has these marketing channels that you're able to take advantage of to, be able to attempt to get these airplays as well too.
Mm-hmm.
You brought up a good point of like, during this time, we have had such an influx of managers and artists and everybody kind of cleaning up their situation.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a pool release, as I was just talking, that was just about to come up. So I had my whole team frantically getting hold of anybody that we had money waiting for, attempting to get as much money out the door as possible. But everybody has been cleaning up right now and going through, and it's been great. So it's it's looking cleaner than it ever has.
Cool.
So musicportland.org/SoundExchange, that link is in the chat, but that is a place to go for that step-by-step guide about how to sign up. Just spend a day at home, make sure you've checked that box, and then maybe think about doing some radio promotion.
Excellent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wade, Malachi, thank you so much. One of those things we just don't think about. We need to. Next up, we've got Dan Mangan from faraway Halifax. Who's got a company. He's a musician in his own right. Amazing. Go deep, Dan Mangan. But he runs a company called Side Door that is created by musicians and that I think really solves a problem that we've all been facing around the live streaming challenge. So Dan, step up.
Thank you very much, Meara. I'm actually I'm just north of you guys. I'm in Vancouver, BC.
Oh, my
but you are correct that Side Door is based in Halifax. That's where our head office is, and that's where the rest of the team is. I spent many, many years cutting my teeth as a musician, and I actually have a lot of ties to Portland in that my wife is from Portland. Some of my first American tours were with Blind Pilot, and also I've toured with Laura Gibson. Some of my album artwork was done by Ashad Simonian, who's a part of the community down there. I have all of these things. I've played shows with Horse Feathers. So everything keeps bringing me back to Portland, and I have a deep, deep love for the city. And so I'm here to talk about Side Door. We started this several years ago, and the initial impetus of Side Door, easiest explanation is like Airbnb for shows. So the presumption is that any space can be a venue. I'm sure many of you have played or been to house concerts. We started with that, but really any space at all. So bookstores and warehouses and juice factories and co-work spaces and backyards and barns and what have you. And we launched about a year ago. We had a great year. We had about 2,500 artists on the platform, 900 venues in North America. We ran about 700 shows through the platform. And we had a great partnership with South by Southwest, and we booked all these tours down to South by. Speaking of South by, the first time I played South by Southwest, I was standing in line to get my badge, very eager, and somebody came up with a huge binder, and it was someone from SoundExchange, and they said, "What's your name?" And I said, Dan Mangan. And so they go flip through the binder. There's $1,200 waiting for you. And I was like, what? $1,200? So you never know. You could sign up and, you know, maybe you got some plays in your old band and you didn't even know. There could be money waiting for you. A big, proud SoundExchange member. Anyhow, so everything gets canceled. Our big South by Southwest plans. And so in the COVID world, you know, a couple months ago, everyone's doing everything for free. Chris Martin's free. All the big stars are doing free shows. It's all on Instagram Live. It's exciting, but what does this mean for the rest of us? And so we started doing something a little different, and we started doing hard tickets. So, you know, just at first we were doing very, very inexpensive tickets, like $6 to $8. And rather than doing them, trying to broadcast to the whole world, when all of these famous people are broadcasting to millions of people for free, A, it feels audacious to do something that isn't for free. And B, you sort of feel like you just want a seat at the table. And I think that that's a really frequent like feeling as an artist, is you just want to be part of the action. And if I don't do it like they're doing it, you know, maybe I could get some extra followers or whatever. And so going the other route and saying, no, let's play real shows online. And rather than doing them through these broadcast platforms like YouTube or Facebook, what happens when we do them like this over Zoom, where, you know, I can see everybody, they can see me. And because I'm a co-founder, but I'm also an artist, I can kind of be the guinea pig here. So I just started playing shows like this. And the very first one was so bad, like tech-wise. It was just strumming into my laptop speaker. I had no idea how to hack Zoom. We've learned so much since then. But it didn't matter. All of the tech was rough. But as soon as that first show ended, we realized, oh my God, like we just tapped into something really magical in that I could see the audience could see each other. And, you know, you're peering on a, like say a Zoom with 900 people maybe, and there's 25 people per screen, and you can flip through gallery view of just like hundreds and hundreds of homes and people who are alone, people with families, dogs, kids, everything, dancing, crying, like humanity, like right in your face. And so since then, you know, it's been an unbelievable couple of months. We've paid out almost $250,000 to artists since the pandemic for online shows. And our average artist payout is like $1,200 on one of these shows. And this has been largely with like, you know, middle class, mid-level musicians, sort of like people who were maybe barely making a living. They were making like a bit of a living, but the platform's open to anybody. It can be like total beginners. It can be superstars. And one thing that we've developed that we are so close to launching is really, really exciting, is an actually gated and fully secure ticket for a Zoom show. So up until this point, you know, you could buy a ticket and you could do it through Side Door, you could do it through Eventbrite, or you could do whatever, and you just email people a link to click on a Zoom show. But Zoom has a capacity. You can buy add-ons to get it to 1,000. But the problem thus far has been that if I send a link to an email to ticket holders, well, then they can just share that link online. And now that ticket is not secure. And what if people who bought a ticket couldn't get into the show because it was capped because someone got in who was there? Anyways, so that is something that we're launching hopefully early next week. We're just in beta testing with it right now. We're really, really close. And that's really exciting because it means that you can have a totally interactive experience. Some of the anecdotes that have come out of this world are mind-blowing, like husband and wife separated. One of them's in the hospital and they're both watching a concert and they're watching each other watch a concert. Mother's Day show where they're, you know, one of the powerful things that we found is that rather than treating online shows like just a crappy version of the real show, is treating this as a brand new medium and then leaning into all those silver linings and saying, well, what about this medium is maybe even more direct, is even more earnest, is even more vulnerable, is even more rewarding. And I've done many of these shows now, and I have to say that at the end of the show, I have this wave of emotion that is very similar to like getting off of a real stage. And it's, the music is the nucleus, it's the magnet that draws everything in. But what we've learned is that what is even more powerful than loving an artist is loving being a part of the community that loves that artist. And that is what is powerful. That's what makes us feel like we're part of something bigger, part of something more magic. And so the fidelity, the musical experience will never be the same as being in the room with someone. But people are leaning into this and getting really creative with Q&A. I've had people in my concerts that have been waiting for me to come and tour in Argentina or Estonia or Russia or India. I've never toured any of those places. And there's people who've been listening to my music for 10 years and they've been waiting for me to come and tour, and I never do. And they've seen me play 6 times in the last 2 months, and I've seen them face to face, and we've talked during the show, and it is mind blowing. And so I am learning to love this medium as a thing, and I truly think it's going to last far beyond this. And our job with Side Door is to try and help you get up the hill. That first show is always a huge pain in the ass. Zoom is a pain in the ass. You got to hack the audio settings. You have to upgrade your account. It's awful. I get it. But once you get up the mountain that very first time, the elation you could feel, and the value of the show is not in the size. It's not, even just playing a Zoom show to like 20 people is awesome. And if they each paid $5-10, you made a little bit of money. Like it adds up because the costs are so low. And we've just seen an incredible amount of success for a lot of artists, and it's really exciting. And we're just trying to spread the word.
Dan, let's talk about, I'm going to jump in with a couple of questions. The setting it up, you have a team that actually helps people sort of create the right sound, make sure you've optimized whatever equipment you have available. Talk about that.
Sure, yeah. So one of the things that we do is we provide some tech support in advance of the show. We provide customer support during the show. People are trying to access your show, they can't get in or something like that. We have customer service that's like part of it. Other interesting thing with Side Door is you can split the revenue right at the point of sale. So you can work with a presenter. You want to work with the Doug Fur. They want to help you promote your online show. They can be involved, and you could run a show. You could run tech through them. But to answer your question, we have sort of like a group of people who are fantastic moderators, having people who can help you run your show, help you run a sound check. We've sort of been developing this archive of, there's a whole new industry. There's audio engineers that previously were on the road 200 days a year and now are sitting around twiddling their thumbs. So what are they doing? They're figuring out this world. They're figuring out how to do online sound checks. I spent half an hour with someone just helping me dial my rig, set my compression settings, or help me figure out how to get my Pro Tools rig routing into Zoom. There's an application called Loopback, which is really handy for that. And so just we have like resources, education. We have a lot of materials that we can give you to help you get up the mountain. And we kind of pride ourselves on being the Sherpa that just helps you, just gently guides you up.
And what does the Sherpa cost?
So we take a 10% commission after the hard costs. So hard costs being credit card fees, so Stripe fees, and we also automatically pay out PROs. So ASCAP BMI, we take 3% of sales and we hold that in escrow, and then we pay that out. This is the complicated part, is that technically you're supposed to pay performing rights organizations, not based on where you are or based on where the IP holder, the songwriter is, of what the songs you're playing, but based on the ears that you're playing too. So technically, you are liable to pay not just ASCAP BMI, but if you have an audience member who's in London and an audience member who's in Germany, you're supposed to be paying PRS, you're supposed to be paying GEMA, you're supposed to be paying SOCAN in Canada, all of these PROs that are all over the world. Technically, you are supposed to be paying them for the listenership share on the show. So it's very complicated. So we're taking that money, we're holding it in escrow for each of these entities. And then once we have, $5,000-10,000 in the pot, we go to GEMA, we go to PRS, and we say, hey, we got money for you guys, let us in. So that's another, and just because Side Door was built to run shows in the real world, so we have this weird leg up in that when it comes to onboarding the real world to the online world, we've already got a process in place to help make that work.
Very cool. Wade, you had a question.
Sorry, I'm going to unmute myself. First of all, that's awesome that we found you at South by Southwest, because that's part of my team's initiatives that we do this big giant board. It's like the bad list. If you're on this, we have money waiting for you. You should have signed up. That's great.
This was back in 2008, I think. So you guys are on it.
Perfect. So, and you may have said this at the beginning, but the artist sets the ticket price for what's happening, and then is there a tip jar as well if there is something else that if people want to contribute even more?
Yeah, there's been so much. That's been a huge desire, both from artists and for audiences alike. So right now it's a fixed fee. We're working on, hopefully within about 6 weeks, we'll make every fee on the platform a minimum fee. So, you could have a $10 ticket. Really, you could buy 3 tickets and that's $30, but let's say I want to pay 60, so I'm gonna make it 60. You can sort of add it on at the point of sale. And then also tipping. Right now, people are kind of working around it by just putting their PayPal in the chat thread, and people click on the PayPal and can donate that way, or Venmo or what have you. So we are developing that into it's been such a crazy scramble. Our development team just like taking this thing that was built for the real world and going, wait a minute, okay, let's make this for the online world. So that's coming. That's sort of like weeks, possibly maybe 2 months away that we'll have that, but it is in the works.
That's great. And I love the idea of working with clubs as well too, so that you're able to maybe even bring them a little bit of, percentage out of what they do, but of what you're making, but also being able to use their mailing list, et cetera. That's great.
Exactly. I mean, they have a community, they have a database, they've got emails, they've got social media, they know how to promote shows, and right now their hands are tied. So, you could do a production from the Doug Fir with no audience, or you could do it from home and the Doug Fir could still help you promote it. They get to run it through their channels. They can take 10, 15, 20%. It's totally double opt-in. So both sides have to sign off, and you slide a bar back and forth. It auto calculates all the revenue. It's really, really simple.
Yeah, absolutely. So sidedooraccess.com. Everybody should go and check it out. I've been sending people there like crazy. We've got an amazing video that sort of shows the experience, and it's the aha moment, because you're like, yes, that you want to see people loving a lyric. You want to see people clapping and losing their minds. The worst moment on the planet is after a musician plays something that just melts you, and then there's that dead silence afterwards, and they sit there uncomfortable and you're sitting there uncomfortable. And yeah, so thank you, Dan, for helping us to avoid that moment.
It's pretty great. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So everybody check out sidedooraccess.com. And next up, I believe we have Scott Wagner, who is a local hero, who is the reason that we've all enjoyed so many festivals and Edgefield shows and other things. Scott.
I'm not so sure I'm the reason.
You are the guy. You're the guy.
I have helped some of these endeavors along with sponsorship dollars. So that's what I do. I sell sponsorships to music festivals, concert series, work with clubs and promoters, and attempt to monetize their events through sponsors, which was going really well up until COVID hit, which has forced me to pivot pretty dramatically. I've been talking to Dan here at length about Side Door, and I'll get to that. But so I work with Edgefield Concerts on the Lawn. I work with Pickathon. I work with Hairfest, the Cuthbert in Eugene, the Brit Festival in Jacksonville, and just a host of others, and whatever I can get my hands on, basically. And it's been going really well. About 3 years in, was in media for 20 years. The Mercury, Willamette Week, Portland Monthly, KEXP, the Rocket, if anyone remembers the Rocket, if anyone's old enough, that dates me a little bit. But so I was a music writer, and it's always been a big part of my life, and something I've been passionate about and perform and so on as well. So when I decided to kind of leave traditional media, I decided that sponsorships were kind of a way to go, in the sense that the music industry is evolving to a model that it's very difficult to sell records. and margins for touring are shrinking, and artist fees are going up, and promoters are, getting more and more risk averse. And so when we're able to bring in, 6-figure type sponsorships for an Edgefield or a Pickathon or Hairfest, for instance, certainly we can buffer some of those things, and they can be a little bit more aggressive with an offer they might make, knowing that they've got this backbone of sponsorship. And then we also do things like, enhance the venue or add offerings. Some of the things that I do with McMenamins, for instance, we were talking about doing some video screens out at Edgefield, with some of the sponsorship dollars to enhance the experience out there. And we still may, because it could turn into a streaming event at some point, depending on capacity. So that's going well. I mean, and I continue to develop new business, and a lot of these things are adapting to COVID and trying to understand the ways and means that folks are going to make money with restrictions and limitations and so on. And it's a little nerve-wracking. You're worried about liability, and you're worried about this, that, and the other. What can I do to kind of find my way through this? And it's certainly true of my business as well. So I have been shifting into streaming quite a bit. Have spoken to Dan, as well as everything from Noon Chorus to Veeps to Tixer to Dice TV, Twitch, Amazon, Spotify, on the phone with all those folks, and kind of getting a handle and a lasso around where the opportunity is. And, as it pertains to my customers, which can be clubs and promoters, as well as, the local artists, because I think that, we're finding that we're going more and more direct to artists as we develop some of these streams. And I don't know if there's no agents in the room, are there? But bypassing the agents in order to, and it's basically, we're kind of in a different paradigm now, where it's some money or no money. Do you want to do show XYZ and have an opportunity here and have me selling sponsorship, have a great platform, have a high-end production, and put together something unique that's got a lot of interactivity to it, maybe a virtual meet and greet, maybe some Zoom pieces, maybe you can sell merch, maybe you can play 4 songs that are unreleased and really generate a global audience based on some of that excitement. So that's where my head is at this point, in terms of trying to corral all these different options and platforms, and assess interest from sponsors and see, what that new normal might look like. And, as Dan said, it certainly will be something that I think does exist post-COVID. I think that we're all kind of getting used to some of these experiences, and I'm not a huge fan. I don't really want to sit around in front of my computer and drink beer and watch a show. It's just not what I'm doing. But I do, obviously, but I'll get more used to it if I can maybe have some of that social fabric where I get to hang out with friends a little bit, and kind of, recreate an experience that I miss. And so that's kind of what I do, and kind of what my goal is here down the line, and thinking about, building some platforms out, and then thinking about what that might look like a year from now. If we're going to have, lower capacity, let's say out at Edgefield next summer, would it make sense to do streaming from there? Certainly been heavily involved with the Pickathon, a concert a day platform, and bringing in sponsorships and trying to learn a lot about streaming with that team over there, and kind of helping to develop some of the thinking there. I guess that's it. I didn't prepare a whole lot here.
I've got a question for you. One thing I definitely will say about the events that I've participated in, that I know you had a part of, is that you don't NASCAR the shit out of them.
Yeah.
I think having you as the entity between sponsor dollars and the music that needs it, you seem to craft relationships that are both fruitful for the sponsor, but that honor the music. And that is something that I think is not true of all people that do what you do.
I think it's very dependent on each promoter and their comfort level, and the artists as well. Certain artists are going to say, no way, we can't see anything from the stage, and you have to be careful too, because if they know you have sponsorship dollars, then that ask goes up dramatically. for a festival especially. So festival versus series versus amphitheater show, that sort of thing. So, but I try to be tasteful. I mean, you know, truth is, you know, if the number's high enough, I'll NASCAR.
Yeah, the fact is, yeah, fair enough. Well, I mean, you know, we are in uncharted territory, and I think, you know, hopefully fans understand that in order to enable certain things, there has to be a little more sponsorship in your face, and you know, hopefully we can continue to keep it honorable. But it's a delicate balance.
Smart marketers know that the gratuitous stuff is just, you know, the Doritos ball crawl at South by a decade ago. Come on, no thanks, you know. So they do know, you know, and I think that they know that experiential means I'm providing value to the customer and I'm creating something that is sort of ingrained and you know, kind of part and parcel to the event itself, so that it enhances my experience and I walk away with a positive, you know, vibe of that brand.
Since a lot of folks are looking at this particular panel and thinking about, I have this amazing sort of body of music or this amazing ability to perform and move people, is there any place for individual sponsor relation? Like, you know, if you have a local pub that you frequent, that they know you and things like that, is that a place where we're going to start seeing more sort of personal patronage of individual artists? Is that appropriate? You know,
it's a good question. I mean, my function would be generally to work with the club, you know, and then you develop a series and you plug artists in, and then the sponsorship would just be a backbone there, you know. I mean, we've gone so far as to put, you know, custom Zoom backgrounds with sponsor logos behind certain VIPs that we see, you know, stack the deck with. So next time you see Side Door, we're just going to have, you know, Pepsi logos all over that. No, I don't know that it's, and I know kind of what you're driving at is like, if there's an artist watching this right now, you know, oh, sorry, excuse me. You know, can we monetize for ourselves? And I would recommend Side Door. You know, and I would recommend, and I do think that, you know, certainly I'm in conversation with me to say, hey, we have maybe a residency that we want to establish, and we're a band that can draw X amount of people, and we have 5 records, and we're going to play each one for 5 days straight and build something cool. It's not unlike what I would have done for Scott at you know, Portland Folk Festival or something. Yeah. If Fox and Bones wanted to do something, you know, et cetera, et cetera. You know, I think that it's there. It would just have to be built.
Yeah, fair enough. I've got a question from the audience. What's the forecast for sponsor dollars with the economic impact on sponsor business? I mean, is there a 50% decline? Yeah, what's the credible sort of ratio we should be looking at?
It's been ice cold for now. You know, we have people saying, I have $500 and I want the moon, you know, I want everything. And it's like, well, I'll do it so I can test out the model and the ROI piece so we can see if we can sell product X, Y, or Z through our stream. I think brands are going to have to start to pivot, and they're all saying, yeah, I have, you know, some money for streaming, but they don't know yet how to evaluate what works and what doesn't. And I mean, the reality is that streaming is a lot more like advertising than sponsorship, where it's experiential and there's a ticketing component, there's a hospitality play, there's all kinds of variables that come in at a live show that can't be replicated. Yeah. So it's been tricky. Hopefully, you know, in the next few months here, I'll be able to share what I'm working on, and there's some, you know, some name artists that are going to draw some attention, and that'll get a sponsor's attention, and they're going to go, oh yeah, I think this is the one. So, you know, you really do have to kind of be at a level, and that's not untrue of other festivals. Yeah. You know, and so
yeah, interesting. Well, I think it is a brave new world, and I think the relationship between people that want to align themselves with great music will continue to be a dynamic that needs to be wrangled. And we're lucky to have folks like you, Scott, representing our community. I think as musicians are out there, it's true. Start to have conversations with people. Find the aligned values. You know, if they love you as a musician and it's your local coffee shop, don't hesitate to ask them if you can work, you know, and help to represent them, and this, like, find the common ground, because
Yeah.
you know, it's a moment, and we're all in this together, and that coffee shop needs you as much as you need them. So just, you know, let's be creative out there about the alignments that we do, because I don't think we can tolerate any too much preciousness at this moment.
Well said.
There we go. We got David Gluck up next. David is out finding injured crows for me to guide him through. But more importantly, he runs a company called Caravan that helps people, primarily music companies, to monetize videos with the dark arts that are YouTube and all of the other channels on which they can be presented. So I'm going to let David talk about the black magic that he deals with.
Yeah, thanks, Meara. And also, if anybody ever has a baby crow get stranded on your porch, I really recommend texting Meara. That's the dark arts that she's useful for.
That's
I
right. That's
strongly recommend. Total success with that baby crow, by the way. Yeah, so I run Caravan. I started about 4 years ago. And I grew up in Portland and left for a while, and then came back and wanted to work in music because I've always been a musician. So I worked with Kevin at CD Baby, although he was a boss and I was answering the phone, but he was always super cool anyway. And then I went and worked at a company called Rumblefish that did music licensing. Rumblefish is like, it's changed a lot over time, but some of y'all may have heard of it. They were kind of a competitor or a similar company to Marmoset here in Portland. And then I went off and started this project. And the idea behind Caravan was that, especially coming from the music licensing world, I thought there's a lot of material out there that didn't seem like it was getting its due in terms of video of music. There used to be a lot of economy built around that. There were a lot of concert movies that came out that were like actually released in theaters. There was like a thriving VHS scene where people would buy those and stuff, but it migrated over largely to YouTube, but also other platforms. And from what I could tell, there wasn't anyone super focused on that thing. So my first client was Pickathon. My second client was KEXP. And we kind of went from there, just helping, whether it's a festival or a venue or whoever it may be that's recording live music. Radio station obviously is probably the bulk of it for me at this point, but there's a variety. Because it's anybody who records video. We also work with audio. We'll put out live records, but like Meara said, video's the main thing. So I just want, there's like a million things I could talk about, and y'all are very free to contact me with questions. I know a lot of people, there's like a tremendous amount of technical detail with regard to like, how do I, fix this rights dispute or whatever. And Meara, please do make me available to anybody who has that kind of question. But I just wanted to give like kind of an overview of where the money comes from, how it works in the context specifically of YouTube. This is not Facebook monetization, which exists now. This is not a variety of other related things, but I'm trying to keep within the timeline here. So any video, just like Wade talked about for any piece of music that you listen to, any video has multiple pieces of intellectual property in it, right? And if it's got music in it, it's got at least 3. Somebody owns that video, somebody owns that audio, and if that audio happens to be music, somebody owns that songwriting. It can be a lot more than 3 too. If there's co-writers on a song, if it's a medley, if it's a derivative work, if it's a bunch of bands playing a show together that all comes out, it can get complicated. And the kind of clients I work with, so KEXP is a great example. They have agreements with the artists who come through and play. Sort of depending on the context, which client it is or what the setup is, some of my clients are just trading basically promo for coming and doing the performance, and they'll help get the word out. Other ones will pay you if you pass a certain benchmark or beat the kind of cost of what it took to make the video. Some, like Banana Stand, will just pay you out no matter what, because they are super sort of mission and ethics first. But the thing I wanted to get to in describing all that is that there's two ways that you can produce money through YouTube or related stuff, right? A lot of this would apply also to Facebook, or if you're doing stuff on Twitch or whatever it might be. You can build up your own presence, or you can try to get on somebody else's platform. So building up your own presence has a lot to do on any platform with putting out stuff regularly and being interactive with the people who appreciate it, right? I mean, no matter how cool the video is, if it's just pushed out into the ether, and Kevin Breuner can speak about this in a minute, if you just make something beautiful and toss it out and disappear for your fans, that's kind of that. You have to get really lucky to make money and produce a large number of fans out of that. But if you stay working, if you stay producing stuff, if you share with your fans, they will tend to show up over time, and especially if you're willing to have a conversation with them. YouTube is a funny one because it's kind of between media and social media. But the people who have those conversations with their fans in the comments, or who are doing the community posts, people who are talking on Twitter and sending people back to YouTube and sending to their website, it does tend to go better. So on YouTube, for example, you got to have 1,000 subscribers, and you have to have accrued 4,000 hours of watch time in the last year to earn money for a YouTube channel. That can be a tricky thing. If you're just starting out, that can be difficult to get there. If you've been going for a while, and if you're the kind of artist or the kind of organization, right? This could work for a venue too, who is committed to making new material regularly. That's not that hard to get to. 1,000 subscribers can happen pretty quickly, especially if you're doing live events, which people tend to subscribe to more often. 4,000 watch hours sounds like a lot, but if you think about, everybody who watches a video putting in 5 minutes of their time, it can move pretty quick. So I just want to say that that's like absolutely one main path to go, is really to keep it in-house, to focus on it for yourself. Like Caravan doesn't work with a lot of individual artists, although there are awesome companies who do. I recommend Quarter Lab. They're great. CD Baby is great. There's people out there who work with individual artists who can support you in that. But if you just need advice, give me a call. And then the other side of it is hitching a ride on what somebody else has got going, right? Playing the KEXP session, doing a So Far Sounds show, going down to KCRW in LA and doing that kind of thing. Going out and doing Treefort. They film a ton of stuff. They're partners of ours. We work with X-Ray here in town. We work with OPB Music here in town. And those vary really widely in terms of what success is going to look like with getting that relationship going, getting that event. If the artist doesn't promote those things, they tend to not produce a lot of action. This is like a constant struggle when I'm talking to radio stations or festivals about like, well, is the artist going to let people know this video is coming out? And they go, yeah, I don't know. They just are artists, man. They just do stuff, which is totally true. And I just want to say to the artist community, speaking as an artist, like, get there. No one cares what radio station is putting stuff out on what day. They care what you are putting out on what day. And if you don't tell the fans, the whole thing doesn't work very well. That said, somebody like KEXP, they're just going to hit more people in the scheme of things because they're big and established. Somebody like KCRW, somebody like, if you get in some major festival and, if you're in the Coachella live stream or whatever, it's going to be meaningful. So before you go into these situations where somebody's going to shoot your performance, you got to be really clear about what that contract consists of, right? Really, really clear. And like I said, are they going to own the whole video? Are they going to own any portion of backing track that might actually be from your record itself? Do they have a right to monetize the composition? Probably not. Probably that should be ASCAP or BMI or CSAC, right? Or So Candy for Canadian or whatever it is. How big is the recoupable fee that they're saying they got to make back before they're giving you part of the revenue? Because a lot of these folks, if you ask, will give you some of the revenue. They just want to make sure their costs are covered. But that might only be $500, or they might say, oh, this is a $20,000 thing. You'll never make it. It's really, really worth checking. That said, it happens, right? Like the weird, I don't mean to belittle anybody, but like the dark arts of things going viral in the least expected ways are utterly beyond me. And this is like all I do for a living. So I would encourage you, just like Malachi said before, get your paperwork straight beforehand. Make sure you're clear on what's going to be owed to you, what you own within that video, what you don't own, what you're lending to the partner who you're making content with, what you're giving them. Those things are really important things. That's kind of that for that segment. And again, happy to answer questions in a sec here, but there's one last little section I wanted to hit, which is just sort of how monetization actually works on YouTube. The main way is ads. Ads run, people click on the thing, and the company who had that ad run pays through, and that money will hit you. And YouTube keeps the minority of it, but it's a big chunk. Depending on the context, 30 to 45%. And then you get the rest, you being the channel or the rights holders, whoever it might be. There's also subscribers. There's people who pay $10 a month to YouTube like they do to Spotify or whatever to avoid ads. Those people tend to be worth about 3 times as much. They're approaching a cent per view, which is not crazy money, but it's more than Spotify. It gets meaningful there. So subscribers are great when you get them, although not a ton of subscribers on YouTube. And then there's like a bunch of other ways that people monetize it. If you've got a bunch of subscribers, if you've got active fans, you can do super chat, which is like people can pay money to have their chat message go through first. And I've seen an amazing example of this recently with a freestyle rapper up in Seattle. People would just put topics in and he would riff on them. And if somebody threw $5 in with the topic, he would do 64 bars on like this guy's cactus or whatever they wanted to hear about. It's a bit silly, but in the right context, it's amazing. There's also donation. If there's a nonprofit you want to support and you have a successful channel, you can turn that on. All these stuff are kind of in the monetization settings of YouTube. So I would encourage anybody to like look around either in your channel or again, if you're getting shot or recorded by someone else, have the conversation with them about what your options are, what they can do. Are they selling merch? If they're selling merch, could they maybe sell some of your merch? If they're linking out to other channels, can they link out to yours? Can they link out to your website to sell a t-shirt or a record? There's a lot of options in there. And I've been talking a lot in a row. So that's probably it, unless anybody has any specific questions about that stuff.
Yeah, no, there's a ton of information. If people are interested in having a deeper dive with registered attendees where we can talk and exchange with the viewers with David, let us know at MusicPortland and we will corral this guy into a room to be talking in sort of more specifics. And if you're people that have a lot of videos or are really interested in diving a little deeper, I can bully this guy into coming and talking with us a little bit more.
Yeah, the one other thing I'd add is that all of what I'm talking about so far is for live performances of your stuff, right? Also, your recorded material is quite valuable, whether it's appearing on YouTube or anywhere else. And there are parties who represent it, right? So Kevin's going to speak, CD Baby will represent any part of your catalog, whether it's video or audio or whatever, or your audio when it appears in video, or it's the soundtrack. And I think it's really important to be clear with yourself, especially when you're, going out and doing these things or enabling somebody to use your song in their video or their movie or putting out a new record and you don't know who's going to cross-post it and hijack it. Make sure you know who's representing you. I think CD Baby's great, but there's lots of folks out there who do a really good job, and like that goes along with being clear on the contract you're signing. Is each part of that contract you need to have somebody who's going to back it up, and that's either you getting super serious about your due diligence and your paperwork, or it's finding the right people to take care of you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. David, you're awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's, as I say, it's a dark art. There's a lot. Every time I hear this stuff, I realize how much more there is to learn. So hopefully this both leaves a lot of people with a sense of there are things I can learn and that I can do more with the music that I have and the content that I have. It is a moment of change, and I think it's incumbent on everybody to really think about what can they be doing to educate themselves about these new models. Next up, and I believe last up, is Kevin Breuner, who from CD Baby, who is both an artist and I love the fact that everybody is also an artist. I think it really helps to inform how people approach their businesses supporting other artists. And I think that's definitely the character here in Portland. It may be everywhere, but Kevin is in a hermetically sealed green room. And, it's a camera thing. He swears he's not actually like a green man, but Kevin, talk to us about what all the thing. I mean, CD Baby is doing so much for artists, and I think a lot of this scary, dark art that we're talking about, you guys have kind of simplified and allowed people to go, you know, you need to make amazing music. You don't necessarily need to understand all these things.
Yeah, I mean, CD Baby, we've been around a long time. We're a music distribution company at its core. That's, you know, the main service we offer to artists. But really, our goal is to help artists monetize their music in as many ways as possible. And so for us, you know, the main thing people come to us for is to get their music on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, and all that kind of stuff. But we're also doing things like YouTube monetization, like David talked about. We have a sync licensing department that's actually been getting a lot of amazing placements for our catalog lately. And then another big piece of what we do is we act as a publishing administrator for artists that are writing original music that allows us to go collect all the publishing royalties that are out there. And in the digital space that we find ourselves in now, there's so many different ways music is being used that generates publishing revenue that artists can earn money off of. And so it's important to, if you're writing original music, to have that piece of it as well. So that's the core of what we do, is just helping artists monetize those recorded assets. And you know, we do things like get your music on TikTok, get Instagram stories, and all those kind of things as well. And we're always looking for new ways to help artists get their music out there and give it a bigger reach. But we also are working a lot in helping artists to promote that release. We don't do a lot of specific like marketing campaigns for individual artists, although we do have a department that works with you know, higher profile artists. But we do have a lot of tools that we try to build just to help artists out of the gate be able to talk about their music, understand how to target fans, you know, make sure that they're just doing the basics to connect their new music to their fans, because, you know, that is a part of the, that is the real work. I mean, getting music out there now, you can go to a lot of places to make that happen, but making a connection with fans and building an audience is the real challenge. And that's where a lot of the hard work comes in. So that's what we're spending a lot of time doing, things in that area and working on new tools and more in that direction in the coming months and years that you'll see from us. But it's definitely been interesting during COVID to see how artists react when we were going into, you know, it was the week of, it was like March 12th was our last day in the office. I haven't seen anybody on my team since then. I have 17 people that report to me, and it's all been over video since then. But we were wondering how are artists going to react to this? What's going to happen? And is it going to be something where, you know, there's a lot of concern because, you know, a lot of the service industry is taking a beating, and a lot of artists have part-time jobs, you know, to help supplement music income and things like that in the service industry. And we thought maybe that'll impact how artists are releasing music. But what we've seen is artists just go head first into, you know, just diving into releasing music like crazy. And so we've seen an enormous amount of release volume since this started. So, you know, artists are definitely thinking, you know, I can't go out and play. I definitely need to keep new music rolling. And for, you know, one thing that I've noticed is that independent artists have always led the charge in finding new and interesting ways to connect with audiences because they've had to. They haven't had the luxury of mass media or giant marketing budgets. So, you know, independent artists were the first ones really capitalizing on YouTube and doing live streaming and a lot of these things that were sort of untested. And so for a lot of the independent artist community, this is how they've pursued their music career anyway. Going out and touring isn't as big of a piece of it as it used to be. There's lots of ways to connect with fans online. So it's really been interesting to see. I know someone earlier mentioned, you know, that first couple weeks, you know, all these famous artists decided, I guess we have to live stream every night now. I'm like, why? No one said you're going to solve COVID by live streaming for us every night. And they made it free. And you're like, oh crap, that kind of, you know, set a precedent that, you know, you should get a free live stream every night because I'm in some, you know, Ben Gibbard was doing it every night. And I like Death Cab for Cutie. And, but it was just, all right, Ben, I think this is enough now. We can call it good. You've done your service.
Yeah, it's kind of sucking all the air out of the room for everybody else that was actually trying to maybe make a few tips, you know.
Yeah.
Giving it away.
Yeah, but you know, what's been interesting is that both Facebook and YouTube have stepped up some new product developments in the area of video that's been really cool. Facebook has a pilot program. My band is a part of it, but it's so confusing how they rolled it out. It's not really easy to use. A service called Facebook Stars, where it basically allows people to tip built into Facebook. And we're a part of the pilot program, and it works on live video. It also works on any video you post natively to Facebook. But I've noticed that not all our fans see it. Only certain fans can see it. So it makes it really hard to promote to your fans when, you know, only a handful of them are getting access to it as well. But that's something new that Facebook's trying, basically allowing people to tip within Facebook. And so a lot of interesting developments happening pretty quick to help artists monetize these platforms even further. YouTube, they've had it for a while, but their Premiere tool has been interesting. Radiohead's really leaned into that, which I thought was cool because here's an artist that probably isn't going to live stream every night, and they don't need to, but they have all this live footage that they haven't released. And so they've been making events around it on YouTube, which everyone goes, and it's like watching a live stream because you have to jump in. Everyone's watching at the same point, basically, until it gets streamed one complete time. So it's kind of like making an event around it that doesn't require someone to be live streaming, but it feels like a live event. So there's a lot of things popping up that have been interesting to see and help artists connect with fans. But, you know, the independent artist community tended to be on that leading edge of using these tools because they've had to. And so it's been interesting to see how it's developed. And, you know, it's so far hanging on a little bit longer than maybe some people thought. We'll see how much longer it lasts. And, you know, at this point, it is concerning about the live industry and what the future looks like there, especially for the independent artists and these smaller venues that are going to have a hard time staying open.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you have, for people that have never done anything with CD Baby, describe the sort of gateway products that you have that can just start something off. I mean, is there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just go to cdbaby.com and you create an account. And then, you know, if you've got a track, you just sign up. You know, there's, you have to have artwork. You have to have the information about who wrote the song. And, you know, all these things are really important. You know, a lot of artists, when they're approaching the market for the first time, and a lot of the services that represented here tonight, you know, probably run into the same issues with artists. You got to have a lot of information in order for us to fully monetize your music. So, you know, we got to know who wrote the song. You got to have the songwriting splits. You got to have high quality artwork. So, you know, these platforms require certain information and the quality of, you know, appearance and consistency and things like that in order to access their platforms. But, you know, so those things artists encounter a lot of times. It's the first time that they're you know, trying to figure out how to get their artwork to the right size because the file size is massive. And, you know, when we were making just CDs and selling them at shows, we could put whatever we wanted on the artwork. It didn't matter, but that's not the case anymore. There's some guidelines that have to be followed. But in general, you just, you know, go sign up, create an account, and you can start distributing your music right away.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, and it's affordable too. It's, you know, it really is great. And the fact that they are hometown for us here, we are just lucky in the extreme. So thank you, CD Baby, for being here as well.
Absolutely.
We've got about 10 minutes left, and I'm interested in knowing from each of the panelists kind of what their barometer is reading. I go day to day. I swear to God, I'm mercurial. I'm back and forth. You know, like, oh my God, this is going to be okay. It's reinvention born of destruction. And then other days it's like, oh my God, it can't work. How are people feeling? So Kevin, we can start with you because you're on deck. Like, put yourself out a year from now. You know, is it entirely different? Is it kind of back to okay? How are you feeling?
I don't know. It's interesting out there, just in the world in general. It seems like there's two main storylines: the world's ending, or it's going to be okay. I don't know. It's tough to know. We at CD Baby. One of the things that we do is we put on a DIY musician conference, and we canceled the one in Spain, and then we canceled the one in Austin. And when we were talking about canceling the one in Spain, we're like, "There's no way we'll cancel the one in Austin. It's in August. Everything will be fine by then." And so I think it's really just a matter of like trying to gauge when people can safely gather again and people feel comfortable leaving the house. That's the thing that's tough to tell, and just how long some of these like venues in particular can weather that storm. I think online, I think artists are finding lots of opportunity to build fan bases. I think the one thing we saw early on, and I don't know if it's going to continue to be true, is that, this is the first time in my lifetime where I can recall the whole world basically stopping and breaking all their patterns and habits, and everything was stopped. And that, there's a lot of downside to that, but for an independent artist, the one thing that we saw happening is that a lot of people had time and space to try new things. We've been at, peak attention for so long, and then finally we weren't there anymore, and people had time to just read about new artists, discover new music, maybe sit and listen more deeply than they would normally. And so we saw some things pick up around with that, but I don't know if that's going to continue and people are going to get antsy and go back to old habits. I don't know. It's hard to tell. I'd be curious to hear what other people are seeing.
Yeah. Anybody else want to jump on this? David or Scott?
I'll say that I'm optimistic, or trying to be. I mean, I'm learning a lot, and I always feel sort of energized when I'm learning, and finding new ways to do what it is that I love to do. And so I'm hopeful that next year we can return to form in terms of live music, and that I'll have kind of added something new to what it is that I do. So that's all I can do, is stay positive, or I'll kick the dog or something.
No, save the dog. Save the dog. Dan, you look like you've got something.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, we're paying very close attention to the habits of live streaming and these kind of shows, online shows. And it seemed like there was a real surge there for a while because everyone was in like peak cabin fever, needed the existential respite. And at the same time, that was right when all these artists were kind of flooding to this thing. And everyone's, like, never in my life would I have bought a soft light box for my studio, but now I can be front lit, So
I've got a ring light as well, because I had to do the same thing.
Well, and it's like I never would have done that except for this reason. I have a 200-foot Ethernet cable at my feet that gives me hardwired internet for my shows. And I never would have bought that if not for this. So like everybody was investing in it, checking it out, learning about it, posting blogs and tutorials about how they hacked whatever interface. And so there was this surge, and I feel like now that like the weather's getting nicer, the distancing isn't quite so intense at this moment. There's definitely a pullback, and people are like Zoom fatigue, right? Like just tired of staring into screens. And so there was this, and now we're kind of doing this, but I have a feeling it's going to level out, and this is going to get super duper normal. And we're going to get really used to finding our own ebb and flow with this online world of shows and music. And I think it's going to stay. I think we're going to see a hybrid model where you're going to get venues that can't fill to capacity, but maybe will be empty and stream a show from the venue. Or maybe they'll fill to 30 or 40% capacity so people can be spread out, sort of like adhere to the guidelines, and then do 2 tiers of tickets. So you've got like a high price, I was there in person and what a novelty that was kind of ticket. and then you do an online show to the rest of the world. At Side Door, where artists can work with presenters, promoters on Side Door, and partner on shows. And so one of the things we're working on is geo-gating, so that you can actually tour. You can work with a presenter in London, a presenter in Pittsburgh, a presenter in Vietnam. You could tour the world and sell specifically to those areas, and allow those presenters to sort of protect their market share. So I think that there's going to be a lot of creativity and a lot of expanding of all of these ideas. And then long term, I think it's going to stick around. I think you're going to see Foo Fighters at, a big arena, and it's Firestone Arena, and then they're just going to start seeing how they can make more money. Everyone's going to start selling online streams of their shows. It's just going to be a thing. And now that not only artists have, behaviorally normalized to it, audiences have too. So I think it's going to stick around, and I'm really, really, really looking forward to getting back on a real stage. I can't express that enough. But in the meantime, I'm also optimistic and open to what this medium can give us that could be special and artistically affirming.
Yeah, I agree. I think once there's a vaccine, I'm probably going to be like Girls Gone Wild and be out there. I think the big problem is that, a lot of my favorite clubs are probably not going to weather the storm. So yeah, I mean, if you're looking at the Troubadour here in Los Angeles and what have you, it's these are the places that, I don't know, hundreds of shows that I've seen and I love to go to. But now, even as someone as iconic as Troubadour not being able to weather this, it's a problem, and it's going to change the landscape. That's for sure. It's probably going to take over a year, but hopefully, things get back to where we were before.
I just sorry to come back to me, but I feel like I already did my piece. But I will say I had a tour of the States and Canada for April. Was postponed to September, and we're about to announce that it's postponed for January. And I'm feeling pretty strongly that by the time we get to December, it's going to get pushed to next September. I have a feeling it's all looking, and even that, think about every band in the world trying to get back on tour at the same time. Venues, there's not going to be that many venues, and it's a weird time.
I think you're muted.
I think I just killed the vibe.
Oh, you didn't. David, David, have you got anything to chuck into the pot?
No, I mean, what the other people in this group have said sounds right to me. I too worry about the local venues. Portland's got, what do we got, Meara? 30?
We have 23 dedicated venues in the Portland metro area. And there are 80 total venues in Oregon, including the nonprofit venues, which includes the Old Church and Alberta Abbey and McDonald Theater in Eugene and a bunch of others. That leads into my closing, which is the update is that there's an emergency board convening in Salem. It'll probably be this week, and they need to hear from everybody in music to let them know that we support their hopeful plans to support our state's music venues. It's really important. We're going to be sending out a letter to everybody on our mailing list. We'll be posting it in social media. Make sure that you contact our state representatives and your state representatives to let them know we absolutely need to maintain these spaces, not only for the sort of magic that they create, but the community that they support and the economy that they are absolutely the foundational piece of. If musicians don't earn any money playing music, they don't buy gear, they don't hire producers, they don't make records, so it's our entire ecosystem is based on very much on these venues surviving. So if we don't have support, 90% of them will close. So we'll be putting out a message tomorrow. Please, everybody, take a minute and right away, don't put it off, right away. Make your voice heard in Salem so that we make sure to support these guys. this has been a treat. You are all amazing, and you know, this is what we need to be thinking about. Let's think about new ideas. I know people in the audience and people listening will have other ideas like, hey, couldn't we do this? Music Portland wants to hear about them. musicportland.org/feedback, or write to info@musicportland.org. We need to all be bringing our best thoughts forward about how we sustain this and how we do it together. There's going to be a first Monday meetup that will include breakouts into little private groups that you guys can all just be chatting amongst yourselves, just like you do at a first Monday. We miss you all. We want to reconnect, and I think we all need it. So thank you again to David Gluck, Dan Mangan, Wade Metzler, Scott Wagner, and Kevin Breuner, and Malachi Graham for this amazing conversation. All is not dark, and you guys have shown some light on it. And thank you so much for what everybody does. Let's all stay strong and weather the pandemic. All right. Love to all.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thanks, everybody.